Please start.
So
Good evening.
welcome to this webinar, the DOS Delhi Ophthalmological Society webinar today on trifocal technology, and this is the second webinar that we are having from Delhi Ophthalmological Society, and we have a galaxy of speakers with us as well as the panelists. And at the outset, I would request Dr. Mahajan to say a few words, and then I will, after that, request Professor J.S. Titial to take over as the chairman of the webinar.
Good evening, everybody. It's really nice to have all of you on the DOS platform. Dr. Chairman, Dr. Katyal is going to introduce the dignitaries on the dais as well as all the speakers. And I hand over to Dr. Katyal to start the things, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. First of all, I would like to congratulate the entire DOS executive, especially President, Secretary, and Treasurer. All three of you are there today. And this is a good initiative in this period of lockdown. And teaching goes a long way nowadays with distance teaching with webinars. And thankfully, we desire multifocality in life. And that is true for cataract surgery also. In last few decades, we have shifted from monofocal lenses to multifocal lenses. And trifocal is a new concept, which is going to change the entire concept of the acceptance of surgeons as well as from the patient point of view. In that regard, today we have this webinar, and the speakers and the panelists we have will really take you, the entire people who are joining us through this webinar, to various concepts of trifocality and its optics, the indications, pre-op assessment for these patients, and most importantly, the questions which these people have, which needs to be answered, especially patients who are not happy with multifocal, trifocal lenses. I would say right from the Dr. Sonu Goel from Jaipur, Dr. Seetal and Dr. Sri Ganesh from Bangalore, and Dr. Garewal from Chandigarh. In fact, this is a multifocal appearance from different parts of the country for our speakers also. Let's go through with these presentations. In the meantime, we do have emails where people can ask their questions, which definitely would like to target to our panelists and get a best answer possible and have a nice discussion on this trifocal webinar today. Can we have the first presentation from Dr. Sonu Goel, who's going to talk about the various platforms of trifocal lenses available today? Dr. Sonu Goel, please. Yeah, very nice.
Very good evening to all. Thanks, Dr. Titial, for that wonderful introduction. And at the outset, I'd like to thank the Delhi Ophthalmological Society, Dr. Namrata, Dr. Mahajan, Dr. Bhalla, Dr. Wahi, and especially the biotech for getting me in for this wonderful talk. Different trifocal technologies and options. I do not have any financial interest in any of the product highlighted. The IOL treatment options for correction of presbyopia are basically the bifocal IOLs, which are available in the world market, the trifocal IOLs, and the extended depth of focus, what we call them as the EDOF IOLs available. So a quick look between what all these three platforms provide. Yes, distance vision, I think all the three IOLs would give you a very crisp distance. But when you talk about the intermediate vision, one of the biggest flaw with the bifocal IOL is they fail to give you a good intermediate vision. Similarly, the EDOF fails to have that crispness in the near vision. Yes, when you try to do a sort of micro monovision, that is kind of a balanced situation where these EDOF would give you some amount of good near vision, but yes, independently, no. The light transmittance, yes, is a big issue with when you talk about the bifocal IOLs. The contrast is almost common in all the three platforms. And the issue of glare and halos, again, the bifocal usually have much more incidence of glare and halos as compared to the EDOFs and the trifocals. All the three platforms are pupillary independent. When you talk about the spectacle independence, I think the trifocals usually outweigh the rest of the platforms. Am I clear, sir? Is the sound audible?
Yeah, it's audible.
So why trifocals? In today's world, vision at each distance is equally important. So you're driving, you're watching TV, you're attending concerts, you're playing sports. I think this is what is crispness for far, which is needed by the patients. When you talk of using a system or a laptop or a computer, you're shopping, you're playing board games, you're playing golf, you're reading a menu card, and you're reading the displays on the airport or the bus stands or the stations. That is where you need a good intermediate vision. And of course, we have all realized in this COVID, when we are locked down, what near vision really means. The screen time has gone up. So reading a book, using a cell phone, doing our hobbies for near. So the trifocal IOL technology has a clear advantage over the bifocal IOLs in terms of the intermediate visual acuity, and the near vision is statistically better for a trifocal IOL when you compare with a EDOF lens. Let us now uh, understand what is the basis of this technology. So the diffractive technology, when you see on the left, so what lens we do is we create these ridges here, and the basic two things to understand is the spacing. So this width here controls the power. So if you see here in an EDOF, the width is large, so it is an 1.75 add. The narrow it becomes, the add-on power increases, and the height basically controls the light energy split. So in bifocal diffractive design, the 40% of the incident light is not deviated. So it gives you a crisp distance vision, but the 40% of the light which is deviated, it creates another focal point, and that is basically what gives you a near vision. So 20% of the light is lost in cases of a bifocal lens. Now, the industry is now started playing on this 20% of the light which is being lost. Why not we harness this 20% of the light and give this light concentrating to the intermediate and near focal points? So that's where the trifocal pitches in. So a combination of two diffractive patterns, a bifocal with the distance and near, and a bifocal with the distance and intermediate, is trying to create a constructive diffractive pattern. So it's all about the construction at zero order, one, and the second order. So it is a second optic which is created where you have the zero order playing for the distance visual acuity. For example, a lens of 21 diopters has a zero order, which is basically meant for distance. The order one gives you a good intermediate, for example, an intermediate add of 1.85. And when you have the first order of this intermediate and the second order of a bifocal which has a near, would both add and give you a crisp second order, which gives you a good near vision. So in trifocals, the light loss is less, that is 12 to 15%, and which is approximately 20% of the bifocal design. So it's all about the light which we are trying to harness and create a trifocality. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you this product from Biotech, which is the Optiflex Trio. It's an aspheric, hydrophobic, natural yellow IOL. It's a single piece, diffractive, refractive, with a 360-degree square edge and the aspheric optic. The near edition is 3.5 diopters and the intermediate is 1.85 diopters. So they have this proprietary BLISS technology. The BLISS stands for the Brilliant Light Sensing System Technology. So it is basically designed for a natural adaptation, effective utilization of the unused light energy, which I am mentioning. And there is an optimum asymmetric. Why asymmetric? Because we are trying to divide the light between distance, intermediate, and near, and a sort of balanced light distribution at each focal point. Now, especially, it is basically optimized diffractive zones, which give you an intermediate and near vision. And at the same time, it doesn't compromise the distance visual acuity. And it has a minimized pupil dependency. So if you see here, this basically has a central zone, which is an optimized refractive zone. It's a 1.12 millimeter. Now 1.12 diameter means a 0.56 drift of angle alpha can, will not give you any kind of glare and halos. if the lens is slightly decentered or the angle alpha is more than around 0.56, it can still be taken care of by the lens. And then there is a diffractive zone, which is around 4 millimeter. And this is where it reduces the dependency on the pupillary size. It is because of this diffractive zone that it becomes pupillary independent. And beyond this, there is a peripheral refractive zone, which supports the distance vision in the scotopic conditions. So this is basically around 4 to 6 millimeters. A quick word which I added is I do eye trace for all my premium patients. That means wherever I plan a multifocal or a EDOF or a trifocal, I would always do an aberrometry. So at 4 millimeter of pupil, if you have 0.3 microns of the HOA, this produces a blur which is almost similar to 0.5 diopter of defocus. So I would never go in for these premium lenses when the HOA is more than 0.7, a coma more than 0.5, or a trefoil more than 0.4, a tetrafoil more than 0.3, or any fifth order aberration more than 0.2. So you really have to select in the ideal patient. A quick word about the modulation transfer function at 3 millimeters. There is a sufficient energy distribution at each focal point. So if you see here in the graph on the left side, there are 3 peaks. The first peak basically denotes the energy at the far vision, the distance. Then the second shows the intermediate, and the third shows at near, that is 3.5 diopter of AD. And on the right side is the intermediate distance. And so if you see, there is sort of a continuous range between 60 to 90 centimeters, which gives you a good vision without any loss of contrast sensitivity. Now, a quick look at the basket available of the trifocals in the world. The Optiflex Trio is from the Biotech, the Panoptix from Alcon, and the Laser Tree from Zeiss. And so if you compare all the 3 platforms, the Trio usually has 12 rings and a 4 millimeter diffractive area. The Panoptix has 15 rings with a diffractive area of 4.5 millimeters, and the Laser Tree has 28 rings, and it's a fully diffractive. The optic is fully diffractive. A quick comparison between the 3, the light yield in cases of the Trio is the max, and it's close to 88.3% as against the Laser Tree, which gives you 85.7, and the Panoptix, which gives you around 88%. The lens material in a Trio, it's a hydrophobic lens, as against the Laser Tree, which is a hydrophilic material with a hydrophobic surface, and the Panoptix is again hydrophobic lens. The spherical aberrations in a Trio is close to minus 0.2. That means it totally neutralizes the aberrations at the corneal level and giving you an optically neutral system. The rings, as I mentioned, they have 12 rings with a diffractive zone of around 4 millimeters. So it has a near AD of 3.5 and an intermediate of 1.85, which creates 2 focal points, 38 centimeters for the near and 72 centimeters for the intermediate. Now, if you compare the defocus curve of all the 3 lenses, so what you see here in the lower is the defocus for the Trio, and this basically provides a 35 to 90 centimeter range of near to intermediate vision. So that means it's almost like a extended range from the near to the intermediate. So between these 2 ranges, the patient is able to see all objects clearly. So the near focal point, which is at 38 centimeters, and the intermediate focal point, which is 72 centimeters, gives you sort of an extended depth of focus between the 2 focal points. And that is what is required when we are doing all our daily activities. The light transmittance, as I mentioned, is around 88.3, which is which gives you a high transmitted light and gives you the good quality of vision and basically improves the contrast sensitivity in the patients. A quick word for the light distribution at various pupil sizes between the distance, intermediate, and near focal points. So the optimum asymmetric and balanced light energy distribution is basically 45% of the light goes for distance, 27% comes for the intermediate, and 28% is basically for the near vision. And this is what gives you an excellent vision at all the three focal points. The contrast sensitivity is, if you see at 3 cycles per degree, it is around 1.62, the photopic, and 6 cycles for the scotopic at 1.85. Now, this is almost close to the phakic range in our eye system. The optical benchmark measurements, the Optiflex Trio, if you have a look on the right side, the distance, intermediate and near, at all pupillary conditions, it provides an excellent image contrast at different pupillary size at each focal point. So in conclusion, the traditional bifocals have limitations of poor intermediate and are now not suitable to provide freedom from glasses. The EDOF technology, yes, though having reduced chances of glare and halos, has limitation of compromised near vision, though we are using them, using the micro monovision, but absolutely crispy near vision is still not achievable with this EDOF technology. So the different trifocal IOL technologies are really promising, and they promise to achieve true spectacle independence. And I think Optiflex Trio, with its 88.3 light transmittance and optimum energy distribution, it provides an excellent quality of vision for all distances. Survey, I had a look on the ESCRS, and this was a survey for all the members which they did, and the question which was put, what type of presbyopia correcting IOL technology is used in the majority of your presbyopia correcting patients. So in 2017, it was 45% for the trifocals, and which drifted to almost 56% in the 2018 survey. So I believe the technology is picking up, and trifocal would surely be one of the technologies which would be married for long term to make the patient spectacally independent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sonu. It was a very nice presentation on trifocal technology. I think we can shift to the next talk so that we have a time for a discussion subsequently. Can I invite Dr. Sheetal to present?
Yes, sir. Are my slides visible?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So a very good evening to one and all. I'm very thankful to the Delhi Ophthalmology Society and Dr. Namrata ma'am and Biotech Vision Care, Mr. Khalsa, for inviting me to this wonderful webinar on multifocal IOLs and especially the trifocal technology. I would be today discussing about the preoperative evaluation for presbyopic refractive surgery, which essentially includes the multifocals and trifocal IOLs as well. So as we all understand, or the patients who opt for multifocal IOLs have really high expectations. And if we want to meet these expectations, it's very important for us to have to perform a very elaborate and very detailed pre-op evaluation so that we can address to all the issues which can affect the post-operative outcome in these patients and improve patient satisfaction. So this is the protocol which we follow in Netradham Eye Hospital for pre-op evaluation of our multifocal patients. So we perform dry eye assessment, corneal topography. We also evaluate corneal higher order abrasions. We study angle kappa and alpha, specular microscopy, macular OCT, optical biometry, and finally also the personality assessment. So I'm sure everyone already knows, and there is enough evidence to support that dry eye or tear film instability can significantly impact our keratometry readings, and it has been found in various studies that dry eye can affect the repeatability of K readings, and it also increases the higher order abrasions. So it can cause an error of up to 1.5 diopters, which is quite significant if you are planning multifocal IOLs and especially the multifocal toric lenses also. So it is better to do a dry eye evaluation with non-invasive dry eye tests which are available these days. So it's better not to touch the ocular surface with any of the strips or stay in the ocular surface, because if you are doing biometry on the same day, then definitely this is not recommended. So we have the SBM tear scope. So this helps in the assessment of ocular surface, including tear film, through a combination of dry eye tests. It measures the thickness of each layer separately. So thickness of lipid layer, mucin layer, aqueous layer, and it also calculates the tear meniscus and gives us the evaluation of meibomian gland dysfunction. And it also gives us the value of NIBUT. So the values less than 15 seconds are consistent with dry eye. So in these patients who have NIBUT less than 15, you can actually first put these patients on treatment and then call them again and repeat the test. And if the tear film is stable, then you can go for your biometry. Another test which can be done, non-invasive test, is the HD analyzer. So HD analyzer also gives us a very good evaluation about the patient's tear film status. So it gives us the mean OSI. OSI is basically objective scatter index. So higher the index, so poorer is the tear film quality. So here on the left side, you can see that the tear film of this patient is very unstable, and the OSI is very high, it's 11.3. So on the right side, after the treatment, you can see OSI has improved to 1.27, and the tear film also has stabilized. So only when you see the tear film is stable and the OSI is less, ideally within 1.5, you should take up these patients for multifocal IOLs. Corneal topography is again a very important test which needs to be done for these patients. So this helps us to identify abnormal corneal shapes such as form fruste keratoconus, PMD, and any post-refractive surgery ectasias. It also helps us to, we can also verify our keratometric values. So the values of K readings which you get from your autoref or IOL master, you can also verify them once with the keratometry, with the topography, the SIM case also. So especially if you're going for a toric multifocal lens. And it also gives us an idea about the astigmatism, whether it's regular or irregular, because usually the irregular corneas have higher order aberrations, and also the axis identification is also not very easy. So all this very important information we get from topography. We also should consider the corneal higher order aberration. So as Sonu sir already stated that corneal aberrations are very important, especially if you're planning a multifocal IOL. So this is the cutoff which has been suggested. If the corneal RMS higher order aberrations are within 0.3 microns, that's the ideal case for multifocals. And if it's within 0.5, it's still acceptable. However, if it's more than 0.5, generally this is also not very easy. Relative contraindication to multifocal IOLs. So sometimes we come across patients who are post-refractive surgery. So this is a case where patient's smile was done 7 years ago. So these patients would invariably ask for multifocal lenses, because that was the primary reason why they underwent refractive surgery when they were young, because they didn't want to wear glasses. Now, when they develop cataract, they would still want to have spectacle independence. So these patients, in these patients, topography is really important because it tells us about the regularity of the cornea. So in these cases, it's good to see the Holiday EKR report. So on the left side, this is the Holiday report, and you can see the distribution of the keratometry. It should be a single peak, and the K values, this shows that the K values are regularly distributed. Okay, so what you use is the 4.5 millimeters K1 and K2 value. So in this case, it's 41.7 and 42.5, which is quite regular. So you can go in for a multifocal lens. Also, if you see in this particular patient, the corneal higher order aberrations are also very low, only 0.2 microns. So this is an ideal case. So in these cases, although they are post-refractive surgery, you can still go in for a multifocal IOL. However, this is a case of post-RK patient. Here you can see that the keratometry distribution is quite irregular. You can see that there is skewing of the K values, and this is not following a normal distribution curve. And the difference in the K1, K2, here you can see minimum is 36.5 and maximum is 39. So there is a lot of variation of keratometry in the treated zone. So this would not be an ideal case, and correspondingly, the patient also has quite high corneal HOA 0.79. So in this case, a monofocal IOL would be ideal. Specular microscopy, of course, we do for routine cases also, but especially in multifocal patients, any case which has the corneal abnormalities, endothelial abnormalities should be certainly avoided. Now, angle kappa and alpha, very, very important concept. Dr. Sonu has already touched upon it, but I would just want to re-emphasize that both these angle kappa and alpha are quite important. Angle kappa is basically the angle between the visual axis and the pupillary axis, and angle alpha is the angle between the visual axis and the optical axis. Now, optical axis is the axis which passes through the center of the limbus and hence through the center of the capsular bag. So that's where your lens is going to settle, and so this is considered to be more important in multifocal lenses compared to angle alpha, angle kappa, because the position of the pupil is not fixed. It may vary from person to person. So angle alpha is considered to be more important. So angle alpha values within 0.6 millimeters are considered to be normal, and for kappa within 0.5 millimeters, you can perform a ray tracing abrometry for evaluating kappa and alpha angles. It is also available in IOL Master 700. So you need to enable this feature because many people don't know that this feature is available actually. So you need to enable this, and angle kappa is available as Chang varying chord, and angle alpha can be seen directly. Okay, so you get these values, angle alpha and kappa, and accordingly you can decide whether the patient would be suitable or not. So angle alpha values within 0.4 millimeters, you can go in for a low ad multifocal or a trifocal. That's ideal scenario. If it's within 0.4 to 0.6, then ideally an EDOF lens would be recommended, because in EDOF lenses the central optical zone is larger. So even if there is a little bit of decentration, the patient will not really have a lot of dysphotopsias, and if it is more than 50, then certainly a monofocal lens is recommended. Macular OCT, I'm sure we all are doing even for routine cases, but again in multifocal and trifocal lenses, this is much more important because we can diagnose subtle abnormalities such as epiretinal membranes and vitreoretinal traction, staphylomas, etc., which otherwise with our routine 90-day examinations or IDO, we are not able to diagnose. And patients with ARMD should be explained about the progressive nature of the disease. So in these cases also multifocal lenses should be ideally avoided. Biometry should be performed using a modern optical biometer. We use IOL Master 700, which gives a much more predictable axial length and keratometric values compared to the IOL Master 500, which we had earlier, because IOL Master 700 has more keratometric points than IOL Master 500. So it captures the corneal data better, and also it has the swept source OCT for axial length measurement, which also is more accurate compared to the partial coherence interferometry. So also total keratometry, which is the new feature in IOL Master 700, is again a very is a new concept, but it's very important, very helpful, especially in multifocal lenses, because it measures the true corneal power, because this is the only instrument which can measure the posterior corneal curvature because of the OCT, the swept source OCT. So the swept source OCT, what it does is that it measures the corneal thickness, and it applies a proprietary calibration on the posterior points, and thus it captures the posterior corneal data, and it actually measures the posterior corneal curvature. So this would be a true indication of the corneal power, which is very important for multifocal lenses and multifocal toric lenses especially. So importance of preoperative counseling in premium IOLs cannot be overlooked. So this is very important. And when you are counseling the patient, it's very important for you to understand every patient's individual lifestyles and needs. So what kind of predominant activities they are doing, are they at home or are they driving? Accordingly, you should select the lens. Also, you should emphasize on the degree of spectacle independence that the patient can expect after the surgery. So never give 100% a guarantee that the patients will be spectacle free 100%, and also explain to them about the the side effects, which is the dysphotoptic phenomena. And you don't need to actually use the words like side effects or disadvantages. You can simply say that this is something which is expected outcome of the surgery because of the profile of the lens, because the lens has rings, so you will definitely see the rings. If you don't see the rings, it means your lens is not working or there's something, so you should see the rings. So the patient is actually well prepared to see the rings and doesn't bother too much about the dysphotopsias, and also need to explain them about the post-operative refinements if at all they need any touch-ups in future. So last but not the least, you can also use the updated DEL questionnaire, which we actually use in our hospital for all the multifocal patients. So this is a set of 8 leading questions wherein the patient needs to answer these questions about how tolerant the patient would be to dysphotopsias, and how willing the patient would be to wear glasses after the surgery. And also we ask the patient to describe his personality, whether he's easygoing or a perfectionist. So what happens with this questionnaire, if you take a questionnaire, although every patient would want to be 100% spectacle free for all distances, but when you ask them these questions and when they need to fill this questionnaire, they are actually forced to take certain decisions about themselves, and they actually understand that, okay, what they're expecting, they may not achieve it because there can be some differences or imperfections. So when they go through all these questions, then they understand, yes, these could be the issues associated with the lens, so they can take their time to decide about the implant. And this gives a very good assessment about the patient's personality, and you can take a decision basically looking at the score which the patient has achieved. So in conclusion, detailed preoperative screening and a proper counseling, along with a meticulous surgery and taking care of the post-operative issues, which Dr. Grewal would be discussing, is very, very important to achieve good outcomes with multifocals and trifocal technology and to create happy patients. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you, Dr. Seetal. Very nice presentation. Before we shift to Dr. Sri Ganesh, I just you talked about counseling of patients with multifocal. Do you take only patients, or you take some relatives for a counseling also? Because sometimes it's not a patient, it's a relative who creates a problem,
Yes, definitely. We always have one attender and one patient who is actually more educated. Sometimes patients are educated, then it is fine, they understand. But sometimes they don't really understand, and we make sure that there is a attender, maybe their son or daughter, who's a first relative, so they can also explain to the patient what is mentioned in the form and what has been told to them. So we do give counseling to the attenders also.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Seetal. Now we invite Dr. Sri Ganesh. I think he would have the maximum experience with trifocal lenses, and holds true for Optiflex lenses also. Let's listen to him and know what is his experience with these newer lenses. Dr. Sri Ganesh, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tityal, and good evening, dear friends. I would like to thank Biotech and DOS for inviting me to this webinar, and I can share my experience with the trifocal lenses. I am a consultant for Carl Zeiss Meditech and Biotech. So, like Dr. Sonu said, today we have an array of multifocal intraocular lenses available, and we have to choose one of these lenses for patients. And you have different concepts. You have hybrid lenses, you have a combination of diffractive, refractive lenses, you have full diffractive lenses, etc. But basically these all aim to give spectacle independence and turn cataract surgery into a potential refractive surgery, so that you have the patient who can have a complete independence from spectacles. There are a lot of limiting factors of the older multifocal designs, and most of the multifocal lenses, the older multifocals, that is the bifocals, have almost become obsolete because they can have decreased contrast sensitivity, poor intermediate and problems. So the expectation after modern cataract surgery is the patients want to enjoy the quality of vision before their aging process started, enjoy life in all dimensions, to have an active lifestyle without being troubled by their glasses. And this is where exactly the trifocal technology comes in. And you have the Optiflex Trio, which is a lens which has natural yellow chromophore, which prevents risk of ARMD, though it is not proven, but it is um, kind of most of the companies you put the yellow chromophore. One of the advantages is that it reduces the risk of ARMD. The other aspect is it's a natural yellow chromophore, so it's not very yellow. It's lightly tinted, so it does not disturb the circadian rhythm, and it does not contribute to altered color perception. It's got an aspheric optic with a negative spherical aberration of minus 0.20. It's got a high Abbe number of 49, which decreases the chromatic aberrations and improves the quality of vision. And it's got a 360-degree square edge design. It increases the biode addition to the posterior capsule and reduces PCO. It's got a smooth lens surface, reduces bacterial addition and inflammatory cell responses. If you look at the MTF, the modulation transfer function, for a standard model eye at 3 millimeter aperture, you can see the distribution of the energy. And you can see that this is for distance, and it's got a 1.85 ad for intermediate and a 3.5 ad for near, and there's a smooth transition between the zones, which minimizes glare and halos. This lens is also glistening free. It comes in BSS. So the reason is lenses stored in BSS reduce the glistening. So this is a glistening free lens, and that actually improves the quality of vision and reduces backscatter. Maximum light transmittance, which gives best quality of vision in all lighting conditions, and uninterrupted functional vision. If you look at the light transmission curve when compared to the natural human lens, you can see that this is the purple line is the Optiflex Trio, and the yellow dotted line is the natural human lens. So the Optiflex Trio blocks the harmful UV rays and filters violet and blue light without loss of contrast sensitivity. So all UV light below 440 nanometers is filtered. The transmittance property is very similar to the transmittance of a young human crystalline lens, and so the light transmission is excellent. Coming to our experience with the Optiflex Trio, we did a study where we compared this with another trifocal lens. So 50 eyes of 25 patients undergoing bilateral cataract surgery with Optiflex Trio. The second eye was done within 1 week, and phacoemulsification was done in 17 of the eyes and 17 of the patients, and femto-assisted cataract surgery in 8 of the patients. All patients satisfied the inclusion criteria. They all had age-related cataract and no associated ocular comorbidities with a normal axial length. And the postoperative period was 6 months. At 6 months, the results were compared retrospectively with 6 months post-op data of 50 eyes of 25 patients who had undergone bilateral cataract surgery with the AT LISA TRI 839 trifocal IOL. So the pre-op investigations that were done for these trifocal IOLs, of course, Dr. Sheetal has already spoken to it, but topography is very important to rule out irregular astigmatism. You can see that in this case, there is a form frustrated keratoconus. So we do the topography for all these patients, and also ray tracing aberrometry with the eye trace to know the angle kappa and angle alpha. And normal values for angle kappa, it should be less than 0.5 millimeters, and for angle alpha, less than 0.6 millimeters. Biometry is done with the IOL Master 700, and we use either the Barrett's Universal 2 or the TK. For the Optiflex, we use the TK, and both eyes were targeted for emetropia. If you look at the comparative specs between the Optiflex Trio and the LISA tree, the Optiflex Trio is a hydrophobic acrylic lens containing natural chromophore, whereas the LISA tree is a hydrophilic acrylic lens with a hydrophobic surface. And the overall size for the Optiflex Trio is 30 millimeters. For the LISA tree is 11 millimeters. The near and intermediate add for both lenses are a little different. If you look at the LISA tree, it's got a near add of plus 3.33 and intermediate of plus 1.66 diopters. So the focus for near is at 40 centimeters and intermediate 80 centimeters. If you look at the Optiflex Trio, it's got a near addition of 3.5, which focuses for 38 centimeters. So it's a little closer. And the intermediate vision is 1.85 instead of 1.66. So that gives a intermediate focus of 72 centimeters, which is good for even patients with smaller arm length. If you look at the light distribution, optimal asymmetric and balanced light distribution at 45% for far, 27% for intermediate, and 28% for near, and it provides excellent vision for all distances. As the pupil size increases, you can see beyond 4.55 millimeters, the distribution changes and there is more light for distance. So in dim light, the distance vision is better. So night driving actually is can be a little better. If you look at the LISA tree, the distribution is almost equal and it is a full optic diffractive lens. So almost equal for distance, intermediate and near, irrespective of pupil size. And with the Optiflex Trio, there's minimum loss of light and it yields 88.3% of light for sharp and clear vision at various distances. Dr. Sonu has already discussed this. This is the implantation of the lens and it's implanted into the capsular bag. The Optiflex Trio, you can see goes in through a sub 2.8 mm incision, the LISA tree sub 2.2, and both of them center very well. This is a preoperative comparison between the two groups, and they were equally matched for age, mean keratometry, and axial length. And you can see the p-values are not very significant. The 6-month outcomes, the post-op uncorrected distance visual acuity, the binocular uncorrected distance acuity is very similar with eyes seeing 20/20 or better vision. With the Optiflex Trio, they were 98% of the eyes seeing 20/20 or better. And with the LISA tree, it was 92% 20/20 or better, 6/6 or better. Coming to the predictability and the post-op residual refractive error, the spherical equivalent, you can see that for the Optiflex Trio, 92% of eyes were within half a diopter. And for the LISA tree, it was 90% within half a diopter. So almost equal kind of a result. The binocular uncorrected near visual acuity at 40 centimeters measured using the ETDRS charts. Eyes reading N6 or better. With the Optiflex Trio, you had 98% of eyes reading N6 or better, and with the LISA tree, about 96%. We also use the Salzburg Reading Desk, which is the SRD. It's a tool for systematic evaluation of reading acuity and reading speeds under standardized condition, and it's a better evaluation of everyday reading abilities possible through a simulation of natural reading process. So the SRD has infrared cameras and which monitor the distance from the screen, and then words are presented and the patient is reads the word, and there is a computer laptop which is attached and a microphone. So the reading speeds are calculated and the reading acuity. And if you look at the reading speeds with SRD, we use letter size 1 at 70, 0.8 letter size at 80, and 0.6 at 90 centimeters. And these were the reading speeds comparative. So you can see the reading speeds were very similar, and all patients read more than 80 words per minute. So if they read more than 80 words per minute, then it is quite good. And here it was almost like 180, both the groups. And you can see that at 80 centimeters and 90 centimeters, the LISA is slightly better. 70 centimeters, the Optiflex Trio is better. Intermediate visual acuity also was measured with the ETDRS charts at 60, 70, 80, and 90 centimeters. It has a string, so you can actually place it at the exact distance. This is at 40 centimeters, and this is at 70 centimeters. And this is a mean uncorrected intermediate visual acuity binocular at 70, 80, and 90 centimeters. And you can see that there was no significant differences between both groups. But intermediate, if you look at it very carefully, for the 70 centimeters, the Optiflex Trio has slightly better visual acuity than the LISA. And LISA at 80 and 90, slightly better than the Trio. This was a contrast sensitivity measured with FACT chart at 6 months. And there was no significant difference between both groups. You can see that the contrast sensitivity is very similar. Coming to the PCO development and YAG rate with the 80 LISA, 2 eyes of 2 patients had evidence of PCO at 6-month follow-up, and both eyes required YAG capsulotomy. With the Optiflex Trio, no patient developed PCO at 6 months, and we didn't YAG any of them. None of the patients required spectacle correction at 6 months, both the groups. And we also plotted the binocular corrected defocus curve. So from +1 to -4, you can see that this is the defocus curve, which is fairly good, even for intermediate vision. And you get a functional vision of almost 3 diopters. We also compared the internal MTF with the eye trace, which gives the quality of and light transmission. And you can see with the monofocal, it's 0.583, and the MTF curve is MTF average height is very nice. This is with the extended range of vision, which is a Symphony, and it's about 0.488. And this is the 80 LISA, it is 0.462. And with the Optiflex Trio, it is 0.513, which is almost slightly less than the monofocal. So the light transmission is excellent, and it's probably because of the BLIS technology and distribution of light. We also assessed the dysphotopic phenomenon of glare, halos, and starbursts. So we showed patients these pictures, and then we graded the dysphotopic phenomenon from 0, no trouble, 1 is minimal trouble, 2 moderate trouble, 3 considerable trouble, and 4 overwhelming trouble. And we scored them. The maximum score was 12 and minimum 0. We also looked at the assessment of spectacle independence. Did they feel like wearing glasses for watching TV, working on computer, or reading? And let's look at the results. The mean dysphotopsia score at 1 week was 4.4 with the LISA and 4.2 with the Optiflex Trio, very similar. But over a period of time at 6 months, it has reduced to around 2 and 2.2. So this is probably because of neuroadaptation, and out of 12, the score out of 12. So 2 out of 12 is kind of negligible at 6 months for both the groups. And this is a spectacle independence for distance. With the Optiflex Trio, spectacle independence was 98%. With the LISA, it was 94%. For intermediate, watching computer, Optiflex Trio and LISA both were 100%. So intermediate vision was excellent in both the groups. The near vision with the Optiflex Trio was 96% because it's got a closer 38 centimeters distance. With the 80 LISA, it was 92%. Overall patient satisfaction score out of 100 with Optiflex Trio, it was 98% and LISA 92%. Very similar. So to conclude, at 6 months, both trifocal IOLs provided excellent uncorrected visual acuity at all distances. No significant difference between visual equity outcomes between both the groups. Incidence of halos and glare were similar. Contrast sensitivity and optical quality were similar. Light transmission being a little better with the trio. Spectacle independence and patient satisfaction score was higher with the Optiflex trio, probably because of the PCO development in the AT-LISA group. 2 patients had PCO. Otherwise, the satisfaction was similar. So that was the comparative study. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sri Ganesh. Very nice presentation and sharing your results on trifocal lenses. There was one question in between. Which IOL formula you have used for these patients, and how do you choose the IOL power for trifocal lenses?
We use the Barrett for the LISA at that time because it was a retrospective comparison. For the LISA, we had used the Barrett Universal and with the IOL Master 700. And for the Optiflex trio, we used either the universal formula or the TK because we had the TK also installed in the, there was not much of a difference between the universal 2 and the TK.
No, the question was, would you choose emetropic power or you go little first myopic, or is there in 2 eyes you have some sort of a monovision type of calculation?
Both eyes were corrected for emetropia, and we aimed for emetropia, and we choose the closest plus rather than the minus.
Okay, for both the lenses.
For both the lenses.
Okay, I think we can come down to this question later with the panelist also.
Yeah.
One more query was there because the design is such with these lenses, because you would have measured the visual acuity in the your OPD or your clinic area. What about these patients going out in a daylight in a photopic condition? Would their distant vision be distorted because the pupil will constrict to a smaller size?
No, because at a smaller, if there's very bright light, also about 45% light distribution is for distance with the Optiflex trio. Only at night time when the pupil dilates more than 4 millimeters, 4 to 6 millimeters, then there is a skew towards the distance, the light distribution, which is better because night vision will be better.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you, Sri Ganesh. Can we shift to now Dr. S.P. Grewal from Chandigarh? I think this would be the most valuable talk for all of us. Dr. Grewal, please. Yeah, I can't have the audio, Okay.
Gaurav, can we have the audio, please? We can't hear anything.
Audio is there, ma'am.
Okay, sir has started.
We can't listen to him.
Can you hear me now?
You can ask him.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Listen carefully, sir. We all are listening carefully and we can't.
Thank you. So, good evening, and I'll be a little talking about what's the experience with the unsatisfied patients. At the outset, let me say that if you're doing trifocal lenses or multifocal lenses, you are going to come across these patients not infrequently. So the first important thing is to listen carefully to the patient, that what patient is saying. That is very important. Just don't say, no, it will be all right. So first important thing is that must listen, give full attention to unhappy multifocal patients and try to get to the bottom of their satisfaction. Help assure the patient that you care about their problem and are determined to find a solution. That is where the empathy plays a very important role. And it's also important to reassure the patient that his or her experience is not uncommon and that you expect it to work towards a solution. So make sure that he's not the only one who gets it. It's not uncommon, and make them feel that, okay, we'll look into what it is and give them assurance that we'll be able to find solution for this. Now, what could be the different causes of dissatisfaction? One needs to distinguish between what might be an initial issue with neuroadaptation versus a problem that will require a surgical correction. The earlier you can take this decision, the better it will be. Now let's assume that the patient is emmetrope. You did the surgery, patient has some complaints, and you find that there are no residual refractive error. Now patients in the early postoperative period with complaints relating to near vision or halos likely fall in the category with the neuroadaptation. So if the distant vision is fine and there are halos and the near vision issues, this patient is likely to improve with a period of time. Patients with complaints of distant vision, assuming they are emmetrope, are more likely to require a surgical intervention at a later stage. So if I see a patient on day 1 and the patient is 6'6", I know that this is patient, if there are some issues later on, I'll be able to handle it. Now, what are the common causes due to which the patient is unsatisfied? And the most common is the blurry vision. And the most common for that is the residual refractive error. It could be a dry eye syndrome. It could be a PCO. It could be a IOL decentration, or it could be a cystoid macular edema. So you have to go in a systemic way and find out what exactly is the issue with this particular patient that is sitting in front of you. The residual refractive error will affect everything. That means the near vision, the intermediate vision, the distant vision, as well as the night vision. Explain the possibility preoperatively that has already been emphasized. Don't hesitate to offer a solution such as glasses or contact lenses. Now, this is important because don't hesitate to give glasses. It is important for the patient to experience that he does have a good vision, he has a potential to get vision, and that he'll be fine. So building up that confidence in the patient that a solution is available, don't hesitate to give him glasses as a trial kind of a thing. And after that, you can think of a surgical solution as a refractive surgery or an IOL exchange. So blurred patient, if he is emmetropic, then you may need spectacles or refractive surgery. If there is IOL decentration, you may have to reposition the lens, IOL exchange, or if there is a PCO, you have to go in for a YAG capsulotomy. Now, this is a study by Dr. Haisha. This is an interesting study because this question is asked, like in the previous, it was asked that what you should leave the patient finally. What should you aim for? Should you aim for 0, 0, or a little plus, or a little minus? Now, this study says that if you leave the patient a little toward the plus, there are higher chances of the issues on the night vision. Another aspect which is important, and there has been questions asked by the audience also about the posterior capsule opacification. You should have a low threshold for YAG capsulotomy in patients with visually significant central PCO. And you need to have a low threshold, and you need to do an early capsulotomy. And I would prefer to do a bigger capsulotomy in these cases. And the presence of the rings doesn't really interfere or create any problem in doing capsulotomy in these cases. The another point is the cystoid macular edema. If the patient is fine in the initial, comes back after 2-3 weeks, the vision is a little down, anterior segment looks fine, look at the, do a OCT, look at the posterior fold, and if there is any issue that needs to be handled, and these are the cases which will improve. The photic phenomena are quite common. Commonly they are the glare, halos, and dysphotopsia. They are much more than what you see in the monofocal cases. It can be due to early PCO. So if the patient has a photic phenomenon and is coming a little later and persisting, do have a look, dilate the pupil and have a look at the capsule. Sometimes, some cases, you may not be able to remove few plaques on the posterior capsule. So these are the cases which, again, you need to, if these are the cases where you should expect that they will have symptoms in the post-operative period, and they will last till you do capsulotomy. So the photic phenomena, are they related to the pupil size? Sometimes, again, if there are some other issues like decentration, then they are more pronounced. Otherwise, they are not that much pronounced. Now, the role of angle kappa has already been explained beautifully in detail by Dr. Sheetal, so I'll not be going into that again. But you need to take into consideration and the kind of the workup which Netra Dhamma does, and Dr. Sheetal showed that this is how they work up. I think it's not a kind of a fiction scene. This is the reality. If you want satisfied patients later on, you must do it. You must look at all these things. You look at the corneal aberrations, you look at the angle kappa, because the idea or the aim is a good, perfect, tight, strict selection criteria. Because if you do surgery in a case where it should not have been done, then one should not expect good results in a situation like that. This is one of the very, very, very common and one situation where it is very underdiagnosed, and it is very, very, I will say that this is something which was missed out quite a bit. And I learned it in a difficult and a hard way. This is a very common cause of dissatisfaction after trifocal. And it can either start after the cataract surgery due to factors which we really don't know. It is a number of factors that can lead to, including what happens during the surgery or the use of the medications in the post-op period, or it could be a worsening of the existing situation. So the evaporative dry eye worsening during screen use can amplify difficulty for patients with the trifocal IOL, and testing to document signs of the dry eye syndrome help not only management, but also in the patient counseling. So it is important, this has already been mentioned, that the dry eyes affect both the biometry as well as the quality of the vision. I'll not be going into the details of this because it has already been touched upon by Sheetal. So there is, this is the effect on the biometry, and this is important to do a complete workup beforehand. It's a good idea to use cyclosporin. It does help improve the cortical film stability in these cases who are undergoing cataract surgery. Now the challenge is, so if we go through briefly what I have said so far, one thing is try to get emmetropia. So if you are bang on to 0, you are likely to be very comfortable with the patient. So first point is accurate IOL power calculation, and then the best possible IOL material and type, and then a good surgery with proper centration and orientation of the IOL. Now there was a question on by one of the audience that how do you do the centration of the IOL? Now it is a very ticklish question, and each surgeon will have its own answer to it, and each surgeon will have his own way of doing it, that you end up the surgery, you tap the lens or you do this. But what I personally feel is that we don't have any way of anchoring the lens anywhere. The lens is going to take a natural position into the back depending upon its design and depending upon only one thing, that is the capsulotomy. And that is why in these patients, if you can do a femtolaser and you can do exactly central on the bag, exact 5.5 millimeter capsulotomy, your chances of getting a centered implant which remains centered over the next couple of years are really good. This is a situation where I did the surgery in one eye, right eye is operated, looks good, fundus was absolutely fine, biometric good, no residual error, retina is fine, but this is what it is. This patient was very, very unsatisfied. I did one eye, and for almost 3 months, he was coming frequently. That I'm not happy. He's able to read almost 6/6, but he's very uncomfortable. I can't see clearly. My vision is very blurry. I can't drive at night. And that is one we had just got into doing all these myopography. So when we did his myopography, this is what the situation was. So we did this is a Wasday square, and we did a LipiFlow for him. After the LipiFlow, he was fine. And before that, for a couple of months, I was telling the patient that, okay, this is neuroadaptation. Once you get the other eye done, you will be fine. And the patient insisted that unless this eye is fine, I'll not be going in for the surgery other eye. But after LipiFlow, he was absolutely fine. And he then demanded that, okay, let me go through the surgery other eye also. This is another situation, a 50-year-old male patient, hypermetrope, plus 3.5, 3.75. I did surgery for him. Bilateral surgery, uneventful surgery, post-operative period, uneventful. He had a visual acuity which was 6.65, but patient was very unhappy. He says he complained of a loss of contrast, and his main complaint that I can't work. I have a problem at my workplace. I can't see clearly and have a cloudy vision. And then that is the time when I asked him, what do you do? He said, I am a stockbroker. I have 5 monitors placed horizontally during the trading hours, and I have to work on that, and I have to work on it at a speed, and I have to take quick decisions. So I tried pilocarpine, no improvement, tried to do whatever residual correction could be done. There was no improvement, gave 3 months for neuroadaptation. There was no change. And 5 months after surgery, I did IOL exchange with a monofocal lens. And after that, the patient was pretty happy. So as I said in the beginning, it's very important to reach at the root cause of this particular case and then try to give him a solution which is best for him, rather than you thinking that should I do it, should I not do it, he may be all right. That approach should not be taken. This is another case, 60 years old male. He had a trifocal implantation done with us in the right eye. Post-operative period, he was absolutely fine. He comes 6 months later. He is extremely uncomfortable and is wearing glasses. And he gives history of surgery elsewhere for the other eye. And on examination, he had a symphony done in the other eye, whereas we had done the trifocal. So this is where he had EDOF lens in one eye and he had a trifocal lens in an eye, and patient was very uncomfortable. The eye with EDOF didn't have a good near vision as compared to the trifocal. Now, avoid mix and match of different technologies. And there was one of the questions from today's audience also, that what is the main difference between trifocal and EDOF lenses? Now, this is the main difference between the trifocal and EDOF. EDOF don't give you good near vision, whereas trifocal will give you very good near vision. So patient expectations are the key. Selection is very, very important, and you need all the toys for that. Personality of the patient, yes. Type of the IOL patient needs. I think this point is not that much relevant now if you have used the best lens, and I would use the trifocal lens in these cases. Proper preoperative work is very important. And in reality, the vast majority of the patients receiving the premier intraocular lens implants are very happy and would have the procedure done again. Now, this is very encouraging. So if you tread safely and rightly and within protocols on the path towards trifocal, you will not have that much of problem. But then, as I said in the beginning, that if you're doing trifocals, multifocals, you are going to have unhappy patients, and be prepared to take care of them at the earliest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very well, sir. Beautifully presented the problems faced by our patients and by us also. One thing I'd like to ask you, if you can highlight, would a patient with little bit of refractive surprise, would you do some sort of a laser treatment for these patients to correct their refractive surprise?
Yes, answer is yes.
Is the same experience with other people also? Have they done laser patch up with these cases? Sri Ganesh? Can't hear.
You have to unmute. Shri, you will have to unmute your...
Unmute.
Yeah, I unmute.
Yeah.
Basically, first I would look at dry eye, because sometimes dry eye also can affect refraction, and you will not be able to refract the patient properly. And then we try to get the best corrected vision. We also look at the defocus curve. Sometimes you're not able to refract these patients. With an autoref, you don't get accurate measurements. Even with retinoscopy, sometimes you may not get an exact refraction. So subjective refraction and use the duochrome test and then try to get the best corrected vision, best corrected refract. Sometimes patient is reading 6.6, but when you refract them, they can actually read to 6/3. So always refract these patients to the best corrected vision and then look at the RCU. If it's more than 0.5, then I would prefer to correct it either with a surface ablation or LASIK. If
I think there are
so, then, and if it's within 3 weeks, then you can plan for an IOL exchange.
Okay.
There are a lot of questions on the preoperative evaluation. People want to know if they don't have a eye trace or if they don't have IOL Master 700, then how can they go about doing investigations if they want to implant a trifocal lens or a EDOF lens?
Dr. Namrata, what I would like to suggest is that if you really want to put your leg inside a multifocal or a trifocal, something like that, then you should have those preoperative equipments, because that is
so what according to the panelist is a basic and equipment, or you can say the equipment which is least expensive, which
optical biometer is a prime requirement. We cannot go for that applanation, all those things, nothing like that. Number one. Number two, a proper K reading evaluation. That is the must. And that too for a virgin eye without being touched, proper K reading, a good optical biometry, and a very good counseling, things spoken right, bang on in an open, bold, nude language, along with a person who is sitting by the patient so that both can understand what doctor is talking. Moreover, if it is possible, what I feel now, eye tracing is of prime importance. If not by myself, if some other colleague can help me, but you have to decipher both the aberrations which are present in the cornea as well as in the lens, because at a time they are antagonizing each other and they are making the patient happy. One fine day you remove the lens and the corneal aberrations pop up and you are unhappy. So this is a must and one should try to adjust.
So the person shouldn't venture into the into this trifocal practice if you don't have these instruments. Sir, would you agree, Dr. Ketyal?
Can I put this question to Dr. Balla?
Yeah, I think, sir, regarding eye trace, I would agree with that. But need to calculate not only the aberrations, the spherical aberration, trefoil coma, everything, and also the angle alpha and angle kappa. But even if you don't have the optical biometer, I think immersion A scan can do the job here, because the accuracy level of immersion A scan is as good as optical biometer if nicely done. I think I would disagree on the optical biometer part, but the rest part I agree, sir.
No, with the optical biometer, basically you can know that you are measuring along the visual axis.
Yeah.
So the immersion biometer, you will not be sure measuring along the visual axis. And that can make a big difference, because you need to be within 0.25 sphere if you need to have a patient patient satisfaction. And when you're using such an expensive lens, a trifocal lens, and promising the patient's expectations are so high, you can't be off in the refraction. So I like to have a spherical refraction within 0.5, ideally within 0.25, and a sphere within 0.4 cylinder. I mean, cylinder within 0.4.
I would like to chip in saying that the major point of dissatisfaction in all these premium practice is the residual refractive error.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can never err on leaving a patient with even a smallest amount of residual refractive error. And now, since we are moving for toric trifocals or toric EDOFs as low as 0.5, so I think an accurate biometry, an accurate preoperative workup, and as Dr. Y rightly said, the no-touch technique, even before putting a drop, I would like the patient to be assessed, blink, and do a keratometry reading, and then do a non-contact immersion biometry, and then do the further evaluation after dilatation. So I think these are the key areas which basically emphasize towards leaving no residual refractive error. So at the same time, Dr. Bhalla is right that if the surgeon has an experience on an immersion biometer, and after doing maybe a couple of hundreds of thousands of these eyes, residual refractive error. So by and large, they can, manage, but that won't be the ideal situation. That is what I feel.
Dr. Katyal, can I ask, please?
Sure,
Sir,
sure. Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's for Dr. Garewal. He told to do the yak capsulectomy as early as 6 months, and size is, he's saying, bigger one. I don't know, bigger one, 4 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 5 millimeter.
Depending upon how much the pupil permits you.
Yeah, no, you minimum, the mostly we do 3.5 millimeter. Here we should go 5 millimeter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
more than
yes,
that.
yes.
So
I think
that's a good
point.
advice.
of evaluation, there was a question. If they don't have the high-end equipments like iTrace, I think you definitely need a topographer at least, because just even with a topographer like a Pentacam, it does give you the corneal abrasions, which is important, and the OpScan does give you angle kappa. So topography, if you have that, that also is quite valuable in these cases. With Pentacam, you can indirectly derive the angle kappa through the X and Y coordinates. So at least you should have access to topography, if not the iTrace.
iTrace.
Can I add
one more
something?
question? Yeah.
Can I,
Dr. Garewal, please.
yeah, I'll say that I'll put it in a little different way and in a very simple way, that if you want 100% results, you need all the ties. If you are happy with 90% results, you can manage comfortably.
I think that's a good answer.
Sir, what was
Yeah,
it?
but
What
Dr.
would be your
Mahajan?
last- what
Yeah,
would be
one
your
thing
last
more.
on this?
They are saying for to go for the maximum emetropia, but we got many times cylindrical powers, and for that toric lenses, trifocals are there. How much minimum toric lens you will like to use? 0.5, 0.75, 1 or 1.5?
Dr. Sonu?
Yeah, Dr. Sonu, please.
Usually, if I'm planning for a monofocal, 1 diopter is my cutoff limit. But for these premium multifocal or trifocal lenses, I would go as low as 0.75. Okay. And for me, it is not the cylindrical astigmatism or the diopters. For me, it is the axis which is more important.
Yes.
Do you put incision on the steep axis, or how do you?
I always go 180 degrees. I never plan sort of a LRI or incision balancing. I would always do it on the lenticle plane with the lens.
Okay.
What we do is, if the patient is going for a femto and has a cylinder within 1.25, then we manage with the relaxing incisions with the femto. But if it is more than 1.25, then I prefer to go in for a toric trifocal. And if the patient does not want to go for a femto, my residual cylinder has to be within 0.5.
But mostly we have seen with LRI, mostly the number comes after 6 to 9 months back.
You get a 70% effect. It's not 100%. So if the patient has a -1, if you're able to correct 70% of it also.
That's a big thing. But I'm telling you, they are coming back after 6 to 9 months. Almost called it's a negligible LRI effect is there.
No, it depends upon whether it is penetrating or intrastromal. We actually did a study also. It's published in the JCRS. So if it's a penetrating incision, then the stability is little better and the effect also is better.
Yeah, that's true.
And is it advisable to aim for emetropia if you're doing both eyes, emetropia in both eyes, or like to have some effect of monovision, keeping 0.5 diopter myopic other eyes?
Trifocal, we don't want to leave a myopia in any of the eyes, because they will work best only if they are targeted for emetropia.
Emetropia both the eyes.
Lenses, then you would want to make the non-dominant eye slightly myopic.
Yeah.
And with the Optiflex Trio, because the reading is at 38 centimeters, I like to see, suppose you aim for 0, but sometimes you don't have 0, you have to select either plus or minus. I like to select on the plus side, because what happens is when you select on the plus side, the reading distance can get shifted a little further away, maybe from 38 to 42 centimeters or so, but that is okay. But the distance vision and night vision will be better. If you are myopic, if you have a myopic residual error, then these patients have more glare and halo. That's what I have noticed. So I like to err slightly on the hyperopic residual, but not more than 0.25.
So we have Dr. KPS Malik also, who's in the audience, and he wants to know, he's put PanOptix N666, but he feels a little uncomfortable bilaterally. So would you have an answer to that as to why this is happening?
See, Dr. Namrata, if you are putting a PanOptix and you are feeling uncomfortable when both eyes have been done, then the only thing is you have to look out for two things. Number one, whether the effective lens position of the IOL is in proper plane or not, whether there is a slight tilt or there is a slight it's offline, that can pose a lot of problem. And second is the size of the capsular axis, how much it is encapturing and how much anterior opacity it is there in the anterior capsule, which may cause a little problem. But a slight tilt or a slight, this can do produce comas and patients are in real trouble. So you have to be very vigilant on that point.
But I think
we are not very clear what problem.
I think it's more of a, I don't think it is related to his vision, but more of, probably dry eye or something like that.
I think the first thing is the complete dry eyes workup. That should be the first thing.
I think, I can invite him to RP Center and get him a free, treatment.
Lippy view, lippy flow.
He didn't come to us.
He can diagnose there easily.
There are several questions,
One question I'd like to ask Namrata, if possible, to all the panelists and the people who are practicing. Is there any different treatment regime, post-op treatment regime for your patient with premium lenses?
No.
Would you add your non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for a longer period?
No.
And give some more emphasis on that, because as you said, a little bit of macular changes or edema which may come up in these patients will have a larger impact on their visual acuity?
No.
I don't change my routine medications, except that I can give them more frequent lubricants, and if they have some dry eye, then I add cyclosporin immediately. So that actually improves their comfort.
Okay.
And again, the basic question, angle alpha, angle kappa, if they don't have the instruments which are, then they shouldn't venture into this practice. In diabetic, Sheetal, in diabetics, would you do these kind of lenses?
Angle alpha, it's very unlikely that it will be very high usually. Angle alpha is normal. Kappa can be high, but that really doesn't make that much of difference in multifocal IOLs. It's more important for refractive surgery. So I think it's still okay.
The number of patients we have seen, thousands of patients I have done toric, multifocals, and it really, sometimes I've seen patients with more than 500 millimeter, and they don't have complaints also. So we are not sure how exactly these patients are affected by these parameters.
Depends upon the personality of the patient.
Yeah, that is true. So it may not be very, very important, but yes, refractive, you rightly said, Sheetal, is a very important point.
How many people have explanted these lenses, trifocal intraocular lenses? Sir already said, Dr. Grewal sir said that he had to do it. And Sonu, you had to do it, or Dr. Vahi had to do it?
No,
sir,
I have done for a couple of patients for the residual refractive error, but I have never had a chance to explant these patients.
It depends what is your percentage of your patient undergoing these lenses. If you do more cases, you'll have more patients with problems.
I have done an exchange. I have not an explantation, but an exchange. Residual power. Sometimes what happens is, what I find with the Zeiss lenses is that the effective lens position changes.
Yeah.
Now I'm actually inserting them under BSS, and it's much better. Sometimes you have some amount of residual, you can have a capsular distension syndrome, capsular blockade, and you get a myopic shift, and the lens kind of move forward. Sometimes with capsular back contraction, if you have a very small rhexis, over a year or so, you get a slight hyperopic shift, and then the patient has reading difficulty. And sometimes you can get refractive surprises if the patient has dry eye and you have not done a proper keratometry or assessment pre-op. Yeah. There were a couple of cases where I have actually exchanged, and then these patients have done well. There was one very interesting case. I presented it in ESCRS also, where again, this patient was an ophthalmologist, and one eye was perfectly normal on dot. The other eye, she had a myopic error of 0.5 diopters, was not willing to undergo any PRK or LASIK. And again, when we did the repeat biometry, it was quite confusing. So what I did, I went in and did a PCCCC, and then I did a optic capture in the PCCCC that kind of shifted the effective lens position, and then the patient became emmetropic, and then she was quite happy. That was actually a very interesting case and a different kind of management. So sometimes you have to be a little innovative.
So Sri Ganesh, you have done PanOptix, LisaTree, and Optiflex. How do you counsel your patient which one to choose?
See, those with a longer arm length, then the LisaTree works well because the reading distance is a little further off. It's at 40 centimeters. Those with a shorter arm length, then the Optiflex Trio works well, and the PanOptix also works well. PanOptix, the ideal intermediate is 60 centimeters with the Optiflex Trio at 70 centimeters. So the Optiflex Trio is kind of in between the PanOptix and the LisaTree, and it has a very good intermediate vision, and the light transmission also is good. The patient satisfaction is quite good.
So for tall people, it's LisaTree with, you know, long arm length, and for short people, it is, you know, PanOptix, and Optiflex is in between. Is it like that?
So the Optiflex, you can use it, I think, for both tall and short people.
Okay, you have to say that anyway. So in diabetics, will you put these lenses across the panel? Is everybody?
Diabetics, basically, diabetes is not a contraindication, but we have to assess and look at the status of the retinopathy and their diabetic control. If they are well controlled and they do not have any diabetic retinopathy, then you can go ahead and put these lenses. The only reason why trifocal or multifocal is not used in diabetic patients is if they require laser, then it's difficult to focus the laser. And angiography also, you may not get a very sharp image. But nowadays, with the OCT, it's not such a big issue, and most of the diabetic retinopathy is managed by injections. So laser has actually taken a backseat. So I don't see a major contraindication, but if there is a frank diabetic retinopathy and a macular edema, I do not advise the trifocals, but diabetics who are well controlled, who have no retinopathy, you can go ahead.
That's where the preoperative macular OCT, if it is normal in these patients.
Diabetic patients are going to get diabetic retinopathy with the passage of time. Maybe 5-10 years, maybe here is a diabetic age, this is going to do the thing.
Non-diabetics can also turn diabetics.
Yeah, that's right. But chances are comparatively less. But diabetic patient is supposed to get diabetic retinopathy is quite high.
I think it would be advisable to put hydrophobic in diabetic patients like PanOptix or Trio rather than hydrophilic like Lisa, because one, the PCO will be more with the hydrophilic, and doing YAG capsulotomy may exacerbate macular edema. So
YAG capsulotomy, many of them you have to do an early YAG cap, but I kind of defer for at least 3 months. 3 months I defer the capsulotomy because incidence of CME is more. And we use a HD analyzer. With the HD analyzer, sometimes the PCO is very mild. You actually can't make out that it is significant on slit lamp even when you do a refraction. But when you do a HD analyzer, it shows a lot of scatter. And we have done a study also pre and post this early YAG capsulotomy. Pre and post, there's a significant difference in the quality of vision and the MTF. So early capsulotomy may be required, but at least defer for 3 months. Don't hesitate to do a capsulotomy because after capsulotomy, but rule out dry eye before doing the capsulotomy, because if there is dry eye, sometimes you go ahead and do the capsulotomy, you find that the patient does not improve in symptoms.
Dr. Trityal sir, what about post LASIK, post RK patients? Would you implant these lenses in those patients? Any experience regarding the same, or how would you manage? Because there are questions on post RK, post LASIK patients.
I think Dr. Seetal very nicely covered this part also. As far as I am concerned, I am a reasonably conservative surgeon in this regard. And maybe patients who are, had a good topography, as Seetal talked about, and they are adamant to undergo a take-up with the trifocals. With this, these newer generation lenses, I might go for these patients. If they have a better topography and the aberration profile is better, yes, why not? But patients who are a poor topography and their contrast access is very poor to begin with, So maybe they are not suitable candidate for a multifocal or trifocal lenses, and that is acceptable for these patients. Counsel them for a longer period and make them understand their contrast will be poor even after putting these lenses, and they may have a more photopic symptom than other patients because they would have more chance of dry eye. Their recovery time will be much more difficult for these patients. So I think we need to really look into the pre-op consideration and give a good counseling, then take a call subsequently.
Can I add one thing?
Biometry also is a problem with these post-refractive surgery patients. Of course, with the newer formulas like TK and Barrett-Ruque, it's better, but still it's very difficult to be within 0.25.
That is true. That is
true. One thing I would like to add is that RK patients, it's a strict no.
Yeah, that's what. I showed the case where in the RK topography, it was quite irregular, the distribution of the keratometry in the EKR holiday report. So RK patients, we generally don't prefer. But post-SMILE, post-LASIK, where the topography is normal, abrasion is not too high, I think it's okay, and results are reasonably good. Patients are usually within 0.5 and they have already been counseled properly about the chances of refractive errors and increased halos and all.
The problem,
and they are okay.
Problem with RK patients is that the refraction keeps fluctuating. You have progressive hyperopia and the K readings fluctuate. Morning, the K readings are different from evening. So it's very difficult to get an accurate biometry. And then if you will definitely have some post-op refractive errors, higher abrasions, and all these problems.
Dr. Sonu, this is for you. When do you decide you will do a EDOF lens or a trifocal lens?
So I think very nicely we have discussed about the personality traits. So we really need to, number one, go into the occupational needs of the patient. And yes, those critical hyper demanding patients, I would err towards doing an EDOF, because EDOF would be a little sparing in terms of glare and halos for these hypercritical patients. And micro monovision might work well for them. But otherwise, on the whole, the trifocal lenses are the lenses to be in. And I think universally now I've shifted my practice from bifocals. It's a strict no for bifocals now. And we either practice trifocals or EDOF lenses.
Okay, Dr. Titial sir, again, I think this is for you.
I would like to add one more thing, there are old patients, who are 75 plus or 80 plus, who have just a reading desire. And some people still take, bifocal lenses with a plus 3.5 or plus 4 add, which gives one of the best reading acuity for these patients. So that can be option. We can't say that bifocals are out totally. There are patients where we have done a trifocal one eye, other eye, they would like to go for a, especially EDOF type of lenses. You can go for a bifocal with a plus 4 add, so it gives a better near acuity for these patients also. So those type of mix and match still can be done for some patients. Yeah, Namrata, you're saying something?
Sir, this is for Dr. Grewal, sir. If you don't have LASIK and there's some amount of residual refractive error, then what are you going to do about it?
Send it to my friend.
But it depends, Namrata, if they have a more of a cylindrical type of power. As we discussed, you can do a LRIs, or you can do a opposite clay corneal incisions, which can decrease the the cylinder. But if you have an actual compound error, then it is difficult to correct.
Okay, sir. Sir, there are many questions by name. Some Dr. Sri Ganesh is supposed to answer. Some, they are specifically targeted to Dr. Grewal, sir. So I will, for a chartered accountant and professional, is it okay to go for trifocals? Dr. Wahi, can we hear your...
Yes, why not? For this profession, a trifocal done with a very proper pre-evaluation and bang on ametropia, if assisted by an instrument like Varian or something like that, it is a lens of choice. You should go it. You should go it.
Let me put this question to Dr. Grewal, sir. Suppose you have a person who's working in the libraries, where he had to look up and down. Their trifocal will be better choice, or a simple monofocal lenses with the multifocal glasses, because they do have a lot of difficulties.
Yeah,
Like
eye hands with the additional glasses will be a good option.
Because they are in a poor contrast locations and they require a better contrast. Because I had the opportunity to operate few of my library people, and initially I had given them a monofocal lenses, but they had a lot of problems seeing up, and the bifocal never worked for these group of patients. So you had to give a reverse bifocal, and they had a very poor this thing. Then I thought of giving them these trifocal lenses, and some of them were quite happy with that. They could
very
see
well.
these groups.
So Sheetal, this one is for you. If there's somebody who's come with a monofocal lens in one eye, can we counsel him for trifocal in the fellow eye?
I think there are studies, but it's better to do a hybrid monovision with EDOF lenses in these cases. Actually, patients adapt better. We have also done a study. We've sent it for publication in JCRS, where we have intentionally planned a monofocal in the dominant eye and an EDOF in the non-dominant eye with a slight monovision of 0.5 to 0.75. And we got very good results because the contrast is not really affected. Monofocal eye, if it is of course targeted at emetropia and you achieve emetropia. So the second eye needs to be operated after seeing the result of the first eye. And this in our experience, because this is what we have done and we have also seen the results. Normally, we don't like to mix and match a trifocal with a monofocal because the optics are quite dissimilar of both the lenses. And because the contrast of the trifocal IOL would certainly not be as good as the monofocal. And halo and glare also will be there. So patients will also compare the eyes more, and then they will get more psychologically affected that there's something really wrong with the eye with multifocal. So I think with trifocal, we don't really recommend. With the ERV lenses, it is possible, and we have done the study and we found good results with this combination.
In fact, Namrata, I had done for some patient who had a ERB or a multifocal lens in one eye, and they had a lot of visual symptoms. And the other eye, I have put a monofocal lens for these patients, and subsequently, the visual symptom also decreased, and they had a better comfort also. So in a reverse way can be one solution for these patients also.
So there are a lot of questions. If we can just go on endlessly with these questions. But one last message from each one of you. Dr. Vahi, what would you, okay, this is a question which was the first question which came to this webinar, and I'll start from Dr. Vahi. Which IOL in your own eye and who is going to be your surgeon? This was the first thing that came on the webinar.
Dr. Namrata, I will now, after doing so many trifocals, I would now like to go for a trifocal for myself. Definitely.
By whom?
Anybody who is amongst you, yes. Dr. Sonu, Dr. Agarwal, Dr. Titial, anybody, Dr. Ganesh, anybody. But yes, I would like to go for trifocal in both eyes, and that too between a span of 2 weeks.
Okay, Sonu?
Sonu is too young, to answer this question.
So let's see if we have something where I really do not fall into getting a track. But yes, definitely a trifocal would be the lens of choice, which I would pitch in.
Okay, and by whom?
Professor Titial. My God.
Professor Titial may not.
I would reach out either RP Center or
given an option, I think we all of us would desire something which.
Sir.
No, I'll do surgery myself.
I know you won't trust anybody. You won't be dictating people.
No, not at all. Not at all, Namrata. Like so many of my own students have graduated from under our training, and they are better than us. Any of my students, they can operate me. I have no objection on that. I'll pick up one of the, the student of mine to do my surgery.
Dr. Bhalla, sir.
I would go for monofocal, sir. And one eye will be done by Dr. Titial, and second eye either Dr. Grewal or Dr. Sonu.
Oh, so you divided.
Anybody or Dr. Sri Ganesh.
Dr. Mahajan, sir.
I'm already operated by your
student.
Okay, Dr. Grewal sir.
Sir, you will have to unmute yourself.
Unmute, sir, unmute.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll choose a surgeon and then leave it to him, whatever
Decide.
he think will be the
That's
best.
the best. That's the best. And what about you, Sri Ganesh?
Yeah, I have done trifocals for my dad and my mom, but I have already undergone Presbyon. For me, and the thing is, I don't tolerate multifocality because I tried using the multifocal contact lens and I was miserable. So for me, I prefer the Presbyon kind of a solution. So I would go in for a regular zero spheric kind of a monofocal lens with targeting the left eye at minus 1.75.
That's reverse.
I'll ask Dr. Sheetal to do it because I have trained her well.
So Sheetal and myself will not answer that question because we are too young.
Yeah.
So to get cataracts.
I have to first wait to become presbyopic first.
And
I
then
have to decide whether I want to go for a presbyopic surgery. And by then, maybe some other new lens comes, which is better than trifocal.
Accommodative lens.
Do you ever think of monovision, one eye for distance and one eye for little bit nearby?
Can I answer that question?
yeah.
Yeah, please.
I made the presentation and I'm not wearing any glasses. I am a natural monovision. My one eye is -2 and one eye is 0, and I have no issues in day to day. I do have my progressive glasses which I take with me for traveling only. Otherwise, it's an excellent solution, very good solution. I don't feel any issue in depth of field in local driving or Gosling. As far as professional is concerned, the slit lamp and the microscope, they are all set to the power, so that's not a problem. And with the Artivo now, that also is taken care of. So it's a good option.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for that great webinar. There were so many questions, we couldn't take all of them. I think we will have another webinar on trifocals and EDOFs again, and maybe make it just a panel discussion. I would like to thank Dr. Mahajan sir and Dr. Bhalla from Delhi Ophthalmological Society, all the speakers, and the sponsor, Mr. Khalsa from the biotech company, as well as our people who do these webinars, Mr. Gaurav and his company. Thank you for doing it again and again, and stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. And of course, Sri Ganesh and Sheetal have already started working. Let's hope all of us get into that groove in the near future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.